It's 6:04. Calling the meeting. Stand, say pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you would please turn off your cell phones or put them on mute, please, I would appreciate it. Approval of the treasurer warrants. Payroll warrants for January 12th, January 19th, and January 26th.
I'll move the warrants. Do we accept it?
Okay. Second. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Yeah.
Thank you. Accounts payable warrants January 16th, January 23rd, and January 30th.
I'll move that we approve the January 16th, January 23rd, and January 30th accounts payable warrants.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Approval of the minutes for January 9th and January 16th. Do we have any corrections?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 9th and January 16th.
I'll second that. All those in favor? Thank you. We have no special presentations. We have committee appointments for Pamela Brackett to the Airport Committee, a reappointment. Susan Blagden to the Board of Appeals, reappointment. Dennis Hebert, Board of Appeals, alternate, reappointment. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to accept all three.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed?
I'll have to abstain.
Thank you. No public hearing. We are now at the public comment section. At each regular selectmen meeting, there will be time devoted to any resident or taxpayer of the town of Wiscasset to address the selectmen regarding any item that is not on the agenda for that meeting. Comments will be limited to 5 minutes per person. There will be a 30-minute maximum for this section. Is there any public comment? Yes, sir.
Hi, Jason Putnam.
Jason.
I just want to talk about the clock. I did get in there. I talked to Joe Calhoun and we went in there and it was like you described and I saw in the picture, it's not a major thing. So I'm waiting on a key or something and I faxed you my insurance. So I did actually get the materials and put them in there today, but I wanted to get a final go ahead as long as Joe, he says the owner's fine. And I'm going to take the next trip and be getting it all upstairs, and then I'm going to build a temporary protection over the gear rods, and then I can put a temporary beam in and replace that beam. But I guess I just wanted actual permission to proceed.
As far as I'm concerned, go right ahead.
Yeah,
Go right ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Oh, and one other thing I saw in the paper, you guys probably did too, that remember when CMP was here? It was their big idea for the extra power line, Power Massachusetts.
Yes.
They lost the bid. They didn't get it. Somebody in New Hampshire's doing it. But they're still going to improve the line, so they may be back. Is all I know. It was an important paper.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else on public comment? Oh, that was short. Okay. Department head or committee chair. The submitted department head reports. Does anybody have any comments or questions regarding the reports?
I'd just like to take this time to remind the board and the folks that are with us this evening about a couple opportunities at the community center. Remember that Winterfest weekend is February 2nd and 3rd, and on Thursday, February 15th, the community center is going to be hosting the Wiscasset Chamber after hours. So I would encourage those of you that are available to bring a friend and to join the community center for those outreach events. I think we'll have snow enough, so we should have a good time.
Okay, we will continue on our path. Unfinished business. Patricia Quinn, Executive Director of Northern New England Passenger Rail Authority, Amtrak Downeaster, presentation regarding passenger rail service in Wisconsin. Patricia.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
As you noted, my name is Patricia Quinn. I'm the Executive Director of the Northern New England Passenger Rail Authority, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today to talk to you a little bit about an idea and hopefully a plan that we have coming together to extend Amtrak Downeaster service for a few weeks in the summertime up the coast of Maine to the communities of Bath, Newcastle, Rockland, and of course Wiscasset right there in the middle. So what I've done is just put together a little presentation for you. We've also left some information packets at your tables, and there is a copy of this presentation in there. And we do have some overview sheets as well for members of the public that are here, just to give you an understanding of what we're talking about. So I'm going to start today just to introduce ourselves to you in terms of who NEPR is, talk to you a little bit about how the Downeaster operates, and then talk to you about what we're thinking of doing in up the coast this summertime. So in terms of NEPR, we're a quasi-government agency. We were formed by the Maine State Legislature in the 1990s for the purposes of restoring passenger rail service to Maine and operating service within Maine. And right now, we had to kind of shorthand that. I'd say we're the business managers of the Amtrak Downeaster. But it's also part of our charter to always look for new opportunities to expand passenger rail. We have a very small organization. There's just 7 of us on the staff, so we're not a big group. In fact, there's 3 of us here tonight. Myself, Jim Russell's our project manager, and Jennifer Crosby's our coordinator of marketing and sales. And we have really 4 areas of focus. The partnerships of all the different entities that come together to operate the Downeaster service. We're responsible for the performance of the service. We promote the service, and of course we spend a lot of time focusing on our passengers, because without passengers and happy passengers, we really don't have much to talk about. In terms of an overview of the Downeaster service, the Downeaster makes 5 round trips every day between Portland and Boston, and 3 of those trips actually extend up and include the communities of Freeport and Brunswick. That's a total of 143 route miles, and that service is operated using 3 Amtrak train sets. And on that section of the line, it operates up to 79 miles an hour. We do operate over 3 host railroads, and we serve 12 station communities in 3 states. In terms of another part of the Downeaster is that it is part of the Amtrak national system. Amtrak, on an annual basis, transports 32 million passengers on 300 trains every day to 500 destinations in 46 states, over 21,000 route miles across the United States. And they generate about $3.3 billion in fares every year. Kind of looking at what the Downeaster has done, we've been in business for 16 years, and over that time, we've transported about 6.8 million people, the equivalent of 550 million passenger miles, and we've generated $102 million in ticket revenues. So a little bit of experience under our belt. On an annual basis, last year we transported about 550,000 riders. That was a 12% increase over the previous year, and we've generated about $9.7 million in ticket revenue. In fact, we broke ridership records in 9 out of 12 months last year. So in terms of the partnerships that we hold, there are actually 4 major types of partnerships that we have. Our operating partner, Amtrak, host railroad partnerships, our food service operator, and station communities. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about those relationships. First of all, we'll start with Amtrak. Amtrak's our operator, and with an agreement with Amtrak, we get the train sets that operate the Downeaster service. So we don't own them. They're not even dedicated to our service. The train sets that run the Downeaster actually come from the National Equipment Pool. They're all ADA accessible. They include reclining seats, they have Wi-Fi, there's a business class and a cafe, and they retrain. And in fact, Amtrak is in the process of what they're calling a refresh. They're actually redoing the insides of all of the passenger coaches. So by next summer, they're going to look like that picture on the screen there, with all nice new leather seats, carpeting and wainscoting, and new LED lights. So very nice, comfortable coaches. Also, as part of that relationship is Amtrak maintains the equipment that they provide for us. And that happens at 2 facilities, one in Portland and one in Brunswick. And we actually own those facilities. And that's where 2 train sets stay overnight in Brunswick every night, and one right now stays in Portland. Amtrak also provides the crews, the onboard crews that are on the trains. And every train has one engineer, a conductor, and an assistant conductor. And there's a local, even though it's part of the national system, there's a local management team that's located right in Portland and in Brunswick, and local managers that are responsible for the service. So it's not managed from afar. It's local folks that do that here. Also, another important part is that the Downeaster is part of the national Amtrak reservation system. Meaning, when I put up that map earlier, and you saw all those communities, those 500 communities that Amtrak serves, the Downeaster is connected to that through this reservation system. So you can actually book a ticket from Chicago, Illinois to Brunswick, Maine. And if this service were to come through, you'd be able to book a ticket from Washington, D.C. all the way through to Wiscasset. So it's connected to the entire system. We only have one station that has actual Amtrak ticket agents, and that's in Portland. All the rest of our stations are staffed by volunteers. So an interesting thing about passenger rail that's different than, say, bus transportation or other kinds of transportation is that the road that the trains drive on or ride on are not owned by us. They're not even owned by Amtrak. They're owned by a third party. So in our case, if you think about starting in Boston, the first 36 miles of the track, all the track in Boston, is actually owned by the MBTA, the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority. And then from the New Hampshire state line all the way through to just about a mile south of the station in Brunswick, that line is owned by Pan Am Railways, so we share that with freight. It's a freight operator. And then from that point, Church Road in Brunswick, all the way up to Rockland and through Wiscasset, that section of the line is known as the Rockland Branch, and that's owned by the Maine Department of Transportation. And another relationship we have is onboard cafe service. The Downeaster is the only Amtrak train in the country that has independently contracted food service. So we have our own food service provider, Next Time, which allows us to promote and serve Maine products and to really do some interesting branding and promotions on the train. And station communities. I mentioned that there are 12 station communities, and each one of them is set up a little bit differently. But none of them are really managed by NEPRA. The relationships that we have with all of our station communities are that they provide the platforms, take care of the platforms, provide any ambassador type services in terms of customer service for people. We do have ticketing machines in most of the stations, but really the local communities are responsible for maintaining and staffing the stations and the platforms. And there are kind of 2 components to a station. When I say station, I kind of think about it globally. But one is the platform, which is the actual infrastructure that the passengers get on and off the train from a platform. And then there's a station facility that might have ticketing and restrooms and visitor information and things like that. So there's those 2 components. And again, those are all very different in all of our station communities. For instance, in Saco, it's one building, and you can go right out through a canopy, and the train is right there at the platform, and there's ticketing machines inside, and it's all kind of put together. In Exeter, New Hampshire, there's just a platform, and there is no station facility building at all, and our ticketing machine is in a convenience store down the street. So we have all kinds of different configurations of stations. So this is definitely not a one-size-fits-all. But you know, it's really an important part of the service, and I think one of the reasons that the Downeaster has been so successful is because in all the communities that we serve, we're part of the community, and the community is a part of us, and there's a lot of ownership. People have a vested interest, and everybody's kind of pulling with us to make it succeed. So there's a lot of pride. Even the stations in the holiday time have competitions for who decorates their station the nicest. So I just want to give you a little snapshot of finance and performance of the service, just so you understand kind of how the finances do work. So in terms of our annual operating budget, In fiscal year 2017, and we operate on the state fiscal year, so that's July through June. So in fiscal year 17, our operating expenses were $21.85 million. So this is not an inexpensive operation to run. Our operating revenues were about a little over $10 million. So we obviously do not cover all the costs through our operating revenues, and so the service does require public support in terms of funding. So the gap that we have is actually funded through a combination of federal funds. 80% comes through federal funds, and then the state of Maine provides us through the Maine DOT with the remaining 20%, which is about $2 million. So when we talk about our service and what we're going to do, sometimes people say, well, you're doing this so you can make money. This is not a for-profit venture. We're a public entity, and we're here to provide a public service. And so that's how we approach everything that we do. The other metrics that we use to measure our performance is on-time performance, and that is the number of trains, the percentage of trains that arrive to their endpoint within their scheduled 10 minutes of schedule. Last year, it was about 70%, which is far away from where we'd like it to be. There's a lot of track work going on that interfered with on-time performance. We can continue to work on it. But a statistic that we're really proud of is our customer satisfaction score, and that is pretty consistently in the 90s. And so we have one of the highest customer satisfaction rankings in the entire country. And another key part about the Downeaster is what we've seen around our station communities is that in and around the station communities we serve, we've seen a lot of economic growth. At the stations, around the stations, for instance in Brunswick, that was a brownfield site. Now it's a whole complex. The town offices have moved there. There are thriving businesses that are located there, and it's really kind of a hub. It's hard to imagine what it was like before. There's about $100 million project that's going on around our station in Portland with a private developer. The Children's Museum of Maine is moving there. There are breweries, wineries, and distilleries. Ice skating rink. There's an apartment complex going in there, and a hotel. In Saco, the mills that are adjacent to the station have all been renovated, and 100 new apartment complexes opened just last June there. So we've seen that all along the route, but there's things happening around the stations because people like having access to transportation. And then we also promote the service. And that's actually a big part of what we do. So our annual marketing budget is about $500,000 a year. So we're very aggressive in getting out there to all those communities to try to get people to ride the train. It's a very diverse marketing approach. We use all the modern digital and social media techniques. We also do traditional advertising. You may have seen our ads on TV or on the radio or in print. And then a lot of outreach. In fact, that's a lot of what Jen does, is going to different events and promotions, interacting with communities, and focusing on groups. So we try to hit all areas of our budget. We also spend quite a bit of our budget trying to not just promote people going to Boston, even though that's the primary use of the train, but trying to get people to come to Maine. So this past year, we allocated about $115,000 of our budget for what we call the Train to Maine campaign, and that's trying to get people from other places to come to Maine and experience that. It's been really successful. Part of that expenditure is we have 100 giant images, and when I mean giant, they're almost the size of this wall, that are in the Boston subway system, 100 of them. And those have generated about 76 million impressions over last season. We have different fair promotions. We go to events, festivals, and offer packages as well. And there's just a sample of what one of those big posters look like. And just has a nice image. It's pretty simple. Dine more, drive less. Take the time to take the train to Maine. It's been very successful. It's driven about 1 million people to our website. And it's actually, we've generated, that we can track 75,000 visitors to the state of Maine. And based on the statistics that are provided by the Maine Office of Tourism, that's generated about $18 million in economic impact to the state. Also interesting to see where the people that go on our website, where they're coming from. Number 1 is Boston. So that's that primary market. 2 is Portland. Number 3 is New York City. Like, who'd have thought, right? People in New York City are looking at the Downeaster. And then right as close as number 7 is Washington, D.C., and then Cambridge, Mass. So you can see that the reach and appeal and interest of the Downeaster really is outside, that people know who we are and are looking to try to ride us. So what is the coastal connection? And this is kind of the term that we're using right now to define what we're calling right now a pilot project to extend Downeaster service up the coast of Maine in the summer. So I'm going to explain to you a little bit why we're doing it and then what it's going to be. So why do we think we should even think about this? Well, tourism is a huge industry in our state. About $6 billion is generated every year. And 25% of the people who come to Maine as a tourist are coming, they're first-time visitors. And then 97% of those people come back again. So it's that hook, getting them to come here and then they come back is really important. And 45% of the people who visit Maine come right from New England, and an additional 42% come from the Mid-Atlantic states. So you can see it's right along that corridor there, which really kind of feeds in nicely with the Amtrak Northeast corridor. It's not a secret to any of you folks. Traffic congestion on Route 1 is a bit of a nightmare, especially here on Route 1 in Wiscasset. So we made that slide. And based on some just Google research we did, anywhere from 18 to 25,000 cars a day in the summertime. So traffic is an issue, and I think it's a barrier for people going up the mid-coast in the summertime. Car-free vacations are a growing trend. Aside from that, people are looking for ways to travel and go on vacation and not have their car. The love affair of the car seems to be not in vogue right at this minute, so we'll take it. And the Rockland branch is very scenic. The Maine Eastern Railroad operated passenger service here for many years. Hopefully you had the chance to do it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful ride. And so it's a great product and gives us really a lot to sell. So what we're proposing is to have Boston, to have some trains that run either from Boston or Brunswick all the way to Rockland with the stops in Bath, Wiscasset, and Newcastle. We're looking at doing this just in the summertime, on the weekends, Friday night, Saturday, Sunday. And we're doing this as part of our existing service. So those 3 train sets that I talked to you about earlier and the crews that Amtrak provides, we're going to use those same train sets and we're going to use the same crews. We're just going to kind of stretch it a little bit, give people a little bit of overtime in the summertime. Well, that's why we're able to do this, is because we don't have to get new trains, we don't have to bring in a lot of resources, and the railroad's really in pretty good shape. And we think it's important because it'll put the mid-coast on the map. We've learned from our past expansions and even the interest that we've gotten, we're just talking about this right now, that it really generates a lot of interest and buzz. And whether people take the train or not, people are talking about the communities that we serve. And it also puts the communities that we serve as part of a national transportation system. We're now connected on that big map. It's a car-free option because, again, a lot of people really don't even want to have their cars because they'd rather play on their phone than drive. And it also provides mobility. So we talked a lot about tourism, but we also want to provide mobility for the residents of Maine and give the folks that live here the chance to move around and have more options. As I said, the major resources already exist. The railroad infrastructure is in place with virtually no improvements needed to be able to operate passenger service there. Now granted, it's not going to be the speediest, but we think we can do it in a 2-hour time frame, which is reasonable given what traffic is. The equipment's available, as I said, we can use the existing train sets as well as the crews.
2 hours to where?
From Brunswick to Rockland. And the train stations exist. So in Bath, there's a train station that's there, and left over from the Maine Eastern Railroad, there's a temporary platform that's there. So very little needs to be done there in terms of having access. Now, one distinction between the Downeaster and the Maine Eastern is because it is Amtrak service and it is publicly funded, everything has to be ADA accessible. And so that means we need those high-level platforms to be able to provide access, and we need to make sure that people who show up in a parking lot, on walkways, can easily, people who are mobility impaired, are able to get from parking areas to the train without any obstructions. So Bath, like I said, is in pretty good shape. They just need to do a little updating to the platform. Newcastle, there's a station building there, which may or may not be accessed, but there's a platform there, part of it's there, part of it is stored. They're going to need to do some work on their parking area because it's gravel and pretty bumpy right now, and probably some sidewalk area and potentially some lighting to be able to provide what we need to be able to stop there. Rockland, again, there's a station there. It's actually, there's a restaurant located there. There's a temporary platform, and that location is in pretty good shape, left over from the Maine Eastern Railroad too. And then, of course, there's here in Wiscasset, which you have a beautiful location. What our plans are in Wiscasset is to stop south of Route 1, not to cross Route 1, but to stop south of Route 1. And the reason for that is that where they have to spot the train, so that it doesn't trigger the signals and stop traffic on Route 1, creating one more barrier. We don't want the train to be hanging out there and following up traffic. We'll leave that to somebody else. So we've come up and evaluated with Amtrak and found that if we start just south of the Route 1 crossing, that's the best place. So that would mean the platform location would be right where your public landing is. There unfortunately are no facilities there, and there isn't a platform. So for the train to stop in Wiscasset, one of those temporary platforms would have to be kind of looked at. There's a couple pictures there of kind of where that location is. There's a little pad that's there, but there really isn't enough access there for us to be able to provide anything, but right along that location. And just in terms of those temporary platforms, they're not anything that are super duper fancy. They're kind of on a trailer, the ones that exist, but they provide a ramp for accessibility for somebody who's mobility impaired, and also provide the high level so that the conductors put a bridge plate out and somebody with a wheelchair, or for that matter, a stroller, or somebody who's just got lots of stuff and dragging their cooler because they're going to the beach, can also just bring their things right on pretty easily. So that's what those sample temporary platforms look like. The schedule, again, we're looking at Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, extending the existing trips, and again, all of this would be put into the Amtrak reservation system. And we've come up with a schedule that's far from perfect, but again, because we're building off of the existing schedule, we don't have tons of flexibility. But we think we've come up with a schedule that can appeal to weekend visitors, day trippers, overnights, groups, and residents, and people who want to go to Portland or Boston for an overnight. So this is what the schedule looks like, and you've got a couple handouts in front of you that show those, but Jen.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was trying to.
So this is what the schedule looks like, and I know it's a lot of numbers, so I'm going to try to break this down for you a little bit. So down the left-hand side are all the station communities. I didn't list all of them, all 16. I kind of gave you a sampling. I did list Rockland, Newcastle, Wiscasset, and Bath, and Brunswick, and Portland. Wells is just kind of a placeholder in between, and then Boston. But the train would stop. Anything that goes south of Brunswick would stop in all of our station communities. So basically on Friday nights, we have a train that normally departs Boston at 5 p.m. and it goes as far as Brunswick, and it gets into Brunswick at 8:20. What we would look at is that train extending all the way to Rockland. So somebody could get on and get in about 10:10. So somebody could get on a train in Boston at 5 p.m., avoid all the traffic, and get all the way to Rockland to stay overnight or for the weekend. Once that train got to Rockland, it would turn around and go right back. I'm not really anticipating many people would ride that, but it would go back to Brunswick and be put away where it gets overnight servicing and gets ready for the next day. On Saturday and Sunday mornings, we have two trains that leave fairly early and go south to Boston, but our third train set doesn't leave until about noontime, a little before noontime. So what we thought we'd do is we'd take that train out a little early, leave at a few minutes before 8 in the morning out of Brunswick, and we run that north to Rockland, making all the stops. Now the schedule that's here, really, those are just placeholders in terms of the time. We don't have a firm schedule, so I can't tell you it's exactly going to be 20 minutes from one location to another, but it's good enough for planning purposes. So the train will leave at 7:50 in the morning, get to Rockland. People can get off, and they can stay in Rockland for the day and come home at 4 o'clock. They can just go for a train ride and go up and back, because that train's going to turn around and come right back. And when it turns around, it gets in at 9:45. It's going to discharge passengers, pick up new passengers, and then that train is going to become our train 694, which goes all the way through to Boston. So that's your connection all the way through. Gets into Boston at 3:30. We also have a train that departs Boston on Saturday and Sunday mornings at 9:45, and that one currently terminates in Brunswick at about 1:15. We're going to continue that train all the way through to Rockland as well. Typically, when the train gets into Brunswick now, it goes into the layover and sits there for a few hours, so that's why we figured we have the equipment, we use it. So we're going to run that all the way to Rockland. It'll get in about 3, be there for about an hour, and then that'll leave at 4 o'clock, and that train will go all the way down to Boston. So that gives some connectivity, gives people, like I said, some day trip options, some overnight options, chance to go in between communities. It's not perfect, but it's what we can manage at this time. We're looking at potentially trying to start this this summer. We were thinking the end of June, maybe the weekend before 4th of July, and running through Labor Day weekend. And another thing, if you follow the Down Easter at all, or you like trains, you may have heard that the last few years we've brought up what we call the Great Dome Car. So it's an Amtrak vintage car that comes up and it's got a glass dome on top, and it's higher, and so it's an observation car for sightseeing. And so we would have that car on that train 691 that comes up from Boston and then goes back. So it would really be an extra special opportunity for folks to be able to visit the wonderful communities along the coast, but also be able to see the coastline from a really unique vantage point. So we think that is really a draw and really an opportunity for us as well. And what's it going to cost? Well, the operating costs are being evaluated, and yesterday we had a board meeting. And what we've estimated is it's probably going to cost NEPRA, our budget, it's going to be about a $100,000 impact to our budget. We figure the cost of the operation is going to add about, the use of the crews and the equipment will be about $200,000. And with some very, very conservative estimates of ridership, we think we can recoup about $100,000 back. So that's going to leave us with about $100,000. And what our board is trying to do is evaluate now whether that's an expenditure that they can justify making, whether the communities are engaged and involved and think that there's enough economic benefit associated with this to justify that expense. But the station costs, again, would be that of the municipalities, and looking for the stations to do what they need to do to make sure that the temporary platforms are either exist or are in good operating order so that they're safe for passengers. And really safety is the primary concern in terms of responsibilities of the communities. You know, many of our host communities have people from the Chamber of Commerce or the Visitor Center that go and greet trains and can pass out maps and welcome people to their areas. Those are all enhancements, but they're not gotta-haves, they're nice-to-haves. But the more we found that the communities kind of provide their own personality, the more successful we think that the service will be. And of course, leveraging marketing. We all market our communities, and we, you know, market the businesses that are here, and being able to, you know, promote on existing websites and things that there's connectivity through the Amtrak Down Easter will just help leverage that brand as we're out promoting to people interested in trains, people that are interested in coming to Wiscasset to see that. So really looking to develop a marketing partnership that way in terms of, you know, using, again, the available resources that we have to leverage that. So what we're really looking for from the 4 station communities is, you know, the support to be able to provide a safe and ADA accessible platform, and the community support to help with the marketing, customer service, and connectivity. And so our next steps is right now we're doing public outreach out to communities. We really need to, by the board's February meeting, which is the 4th Monday in February, I think at that point in time be able to make a decision as to whether we're going forward or not. So any communities are going to have to commit whether they're going to, excuse the pun, be on board or not, and being able to provide the resources necessary for us to have a stop. And again, you know, given feedback from the communities of how important it is, we feel the economic impacts will be, and the importance to the area to have this service will give the board justification to be able to allocate the budget resources, assuming we can find them, to go ahead and operate this service. So we need to, you know, get going by March so that we can go ahead and sign the necessary agreements and get it all programmed into the Amtrak system so we can be ready to rock and roll by the end of June. And go one more, Jen. So we've got a lot of momentum. We'd like to build on it, and time to take the train. So with that, I will entertain any questions that you may have. I'll also let you know that there's some information here available for yourselves and for the public, a little pamphlet about NEPRA, some of the promotional materials that we have, so you can see how we do promote our station communities, and we would do that for these communities as well. Our current schedule, and then a one-sheeter about kind of highlighting what I just went through.
Thank you, Patricia. Does the board have any questions first? anyone in the public. Yes, Susan?
Martin, can you give the selectmen of the town a ballpark figure of how much this temporary platform might cost?
I think the Department of Transportation had those made. I'm looking to Jim to confirm that for me. And I think we estimated that if they were to be done right now, the cost would be probably in the order of magnitude of $20,000.
20,000 plus is what the DOT spent on those temporary platforms, the movable platforms.
That said, you wouldn't need to have to order those. We have diagrams and sketches, and they probably could be
You
custom
can
built.
construct it out of wood and you have all that those are and then some, I think, for less than that. It just has to be height and the ramp has to be ADA accessible in essentially a 12-to-1 scenario. We've probably all seen handicap ramps, but it just has to be high enough and roll on enough to let folks get onto it.
My question would be, what happened to the ones that Maine Eastern had here in Wiscasset?
The JDOT bought 3 of them, and they're in Newcastle, Rockland, and Bath. And the one in Wiscasset, they only bought 3. I don't know why they didn't buy 4. We just know that we have the 3 available to us to use.
There is a set of aluminum ramps down by the railroad tracks going over the sewer treatment plant. I thought that was all part of.
That goes to the one in Newcastle.
Oh, it
But
does?
the actual ramp, the platform is in Newcastle. For some reason, the DOT moved them out of the Newcastle parking lot and brought them here to Wiscasset.
Oh, okay, because they've been sitting there for a while, and that's dedicated to Newcastle?
And those ones that the DOT have, those are metal, right?
Yeah, it's an aluminum ramp with a steel platform that basically is on a trailer so that they can move them to site to site.
Do they have to be rolling, or can they be stationary for the season?
Oh, stationary, absolutely. It just has to be in the proper position
Right.
for where the train's gonna stop. And specifically here in Wiscasset, as Patricia mentioned, we don't want to, as they call, foul the crossing circuit, because the crossings all have what they refer to as predictors, so that it recognizes there's a train on the track approaching the crossing, and that in turn makes the lights go on and stops the traffic. So in the case of this one in Wiscasset, we would absolutely want to stay out of that crossing circuit when we're adding or disembarking passengers, so that when we cross Route 1, it's one time only, and so that there's no false start, so to speak. So to the point of permanent, or not moving, absolutely, we just got to put it basically at your boat ramp. There should be.
88 compliant ramp is the 1-inch drop per foot?
Yeah,
Is that
12-1.
correct? Yeah.
And it's a 4-foot height of platform to roll onto the train.
They're not extravagant.
No.
It's not a extravagant requirement, it's just to get them.
We have all the dimensional requirements, so it's really just a glorified deck with a ADA ramp to it.
Right.
Is this process contingent on all the communities between Rockland and Bureau, Rockland and Orphan, buying on and doing it, or if 1 or 2 of the communities, for whatever reason, decided not to, can it still go forward if the rest of the communities are involved?
I think if, the endpoint, again, looking at going to Rockland, I think if we get to the endpoint, we'll do that and hope that the other communities are here, but I don't think it's necessary. I mean, would we go if Wiscasset wasn't a stop? Like, regretfully, we probably would if Rockland was on board.
Any the others committed yet?
They haven't formally committed, but we did have meetings in Newcastle and Rockland. They've given us kind of a verbal support, and Jim's actually following up with Rockland later this week to just confirm what the requirements are. And then we'll have to get back to Newcastle to ask for their support. The Bath, I haven't had a chance to get to them yet. I'm going there next Tuesday.
Any other questions? Yes.
I just have Mary Ellen Barnes, Lincoln County Regional Planning, and I don't want to get too far ahead of the selectmen's conversation about this, but I hope you'll give positive consideration to being part of this program. Really having the rail line go through the town is a great resource. I don't know how many folks took Maine Eastern Railroad a few years ago, but along with Pat Cloutier and a few other members of the chamber and the Booth Bay Chamber, we were part of the welcoming team when the service got started in July and August. We also know how to roll up our sleeves and help to market the Wiscasset, so we're hopeful that you'll give a positive answer to this project.
Thank you. Catherine?
You mentioned, and you did too, the specifications for the ramp that needs to be built. Do you have those, copies of those with you today?
I don't have any with me, but I can certainly send it to whomever.
Your town manager?
Have
We'd
it
like
sent
to
to the
look
town
at it,
manager so we can look at it.
figure
Sure.
out how much it's gonna cost.
If possibly, we can either outsource this ourselves or go to MDOT, whichever way it would be feasible. Is that okay?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank
We'll
you.
send them to you first thing in the morning.
All right, thank you. I mean, I agree. I was speaking for myself. I think this would be a great thing for Wiscasset. And if we can, make it happen, I think it would be fantastic.
I think we should try very hard to make it happen.
Well,
This town should be capable of building a plant.
that's what I'm thinking.
We have a wood source, transfer station.
That's what I'm thinking, that we could probably do it ourselves.
Jason, you can build a.
Sure, we're not.
Yeah, we kind of think you can build one too. I mean, I think it's pretty basic.
Yeah, very basic.
All right.
So is it basically the consensus of the board that we want to
Yes.
further investigate this and go forward?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Great. So Marion certainly knows how to reach me. We'll send that information along first thing in the morning. And, any additional thoughts, Jim would be happy to come out and meet with folks from the town on site, talk about location and those types of things and add a little more specificity. But, appreciate your consideration, and the sooner we can get back with the information, hopefully we can be visiting in the summer.
Thank you very much, Patricia. I'd like to take a 5-minute break so that if they would like to have it, they can. Thank you.
I was trying to figure out how to do it really fast. I got up once I was in there, so I don't think I would have been really.
Exactly that same spot.
Forensic is $40. Since the train came and runs
Oh, yeah.
Not when I walk on, yeah, he's got that accent, so it's Nope, it's not. Nope, it's not.
Good to come to people. We're gonna buy
This is today's gift.
I'll do this.
We could, when we got, when we had the playground, we had so many volunteers, it would be.
Thank you, that's gonna be great.
Kind of like a barn raising.
Really is. It's about 15-foot length by 50 feet. Are they having trouble with people wanting to use the concept?
$20 or less.
No, that would be.
One lady.
Yeah.
you very
Can minors still license or something there?
Probably not, because it's, they need to go in what's called a cab bag. So, they need to have that access to get on the time to stop. I don't leave it to my determination, but it's unlikely for some of that would be.
Because that would be really.
That's the way to travel.
A lot of people, Boston and New York, a lot of people go down north. And that's probably
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
and the ability to, have a nice day on the summer day.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think the entrance, we really have all. Sure. It's gonna evolve that way.
And he's got a point, there is such a thing as prejudice. Group of people locally who want to look at around. There are few people. And there could be more, like my family too. Well, I mean, that's a spirit. You're looking at. And they're used to doing it.
I'll call the meeting back to order. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the winter parking ban. Parking fines and issues. You're on. You want the memo?
Yeah, I didn't bring them. Sorry, I was in there.
That's okay.
Thank you. Okay, good evening. What you have in front of you are some issues that I discovered about some of the parking in general, not just the winter parking ban, and my recommendations for adding a couple of ordinances, specifically for handicap parking. We do not have that on in the ordinance, and in order for us to charge someone under the ordinance for the town to collect the money, we need a law. Otherwise, the state's going to collect that fee, and that's $250 a pop. So I think that would behoove us to get that. A couple other small remarks about 24-hour parking. These are all based on other towns that have this in an ordinance. These are ones that we are missing currently. As far as the fee of the fines, on your last page, I gave a breakdown between Booth Bay, Wiscasset, and us, and what we're charging and what they're charging currently. And some of them are, the majority of them are in line. We're under by $5 for the most part, here and there. Fire hydrant, for instance, Wiscasset is charging $250. We're charging $100. But then again, Booth Bay is charging $150. So you as the select board will have to determine what you feel is appropriate.
Does the board have any questions or comments regarding this? Yes, Bob.
Your recommendation is 250 on the handicap parking.
That is correct. That's the state law.
And we're currently at 100.
We are currently at $100, yes. And the other towns are at $250. They're following along with the state requirement, the state fine.
So any corrections in the fines would have to go back to the ordinance, changing the ordinance, is that what you're saying?
As far as the fines, I think they're based what you guys decide. I don't think it has to go to the ordinance committee. For the ordinances, and Marion,
correct me if I'm wrong, I thought in the state of Maine that parking didn't have to be approved by the citizens. It was approved by the local board only. So these recommendations for these ordinances for parking would be solely on you. It wouldn't have to go to a town vote.
Okay, all right, that was my question. So basically, if we took the handicap and put it up to 250, we would be in line with the state and the rest of the,
As well as adding that ordinance. I can't enforce something without an ordinance.
okay.
So that one would have to become a town ordinance?
It would have to be a town ordinance. We don't currently have one. So I don't have anything to back that ticket up other than a state charge. And then if I wrote anybody under the state charge, they collect the money, the town does not.
Okay.
And the same with parking within 10 feet of a hydrant. We would add the cost of the fine, the verbiage, and the same with the 24-hour limit for parking lots and streets. So again, this would solely be on you guys to change or add these ordinances. It wouldn't have to be a town vote because it is only parking.
So Marion, we could just change the wording in the town ordinance on our road. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, if you may remember, Bob, at one of the previous meetings, I gave you the excerpt from the ordinance where the selectmen have the authority for the parking. I apologize, I didn't re-include it again with this, but we've had it at the previous meeting about where your authority came from.
Well, I mean, we have the authority to set the fee, but do we have the authority to insert the language?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to see us do as the chief recommends, the 3 different changes regarding parking fines, the hydrant, exceeding the 24-hour parking, and to take the handicap and put that up to 250. The other ones
Are you wanting to stay the other ones at $20 or $25? I know you had mentioned you liked the number 25 a couple weeks ago.
yeah.
No, she likes 50.
I like 50,
Like 50,
but
yes.
I wasn't able to do that either.
Bucks, it much to walk over right on the table. I don't think I do.
So, Chief, seemed a little confused. You said the fee is $100 for parking in front of, in a handicap parking spot?
Currently, but
We don't have an ordinance.
But we don't have an ordinance in order to enforce that.
So, when it does happen, you take
No,
$100 and
I have
send
to
to
write,
the
I
state.
have to write under the state law.
Oh, so it's a
Regardless,
moot point
it's a
anyway,
moot
then.
point for
Okay,
that $100.
okay. I got you.
Well, under the fire lane, we don't do anything.
Correct, we do not have anything for that under the town. So if you would like, that could fall under improper parking.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else want to, Catherine?
Well, you had said that you would like to up the ante on some of these $20 fines.
Yes.
I know you want 50, but
I'll settle for 25.
I
Get
was going to
25.
suggest
Jeez.
that everything that's $20, we change to 25.
Okay, I can agree with that one.
Maybe you'll make your 50 somewhere along the line.
I'll just walk the right part.
And once you have authorized the changes, then I can order new parking books, because
Okay.
currently we have 1 or 2 books left, that's it.
Okay.
Is obstructing a roadway driveway, is that improper parking?
Improper parking.
So that doesn't have.
We can fall, that would fall under the $25.
Right.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily have to.
Correct.
That.
Correct.
What about the fire hydrant? Are we're still at 100. Yeah, that's right, have people on taxes. 250.
Pretty
How about the other
serious.
side of the board? Anybody think anything else about the fire hydrant? Are you good with 100 or?
I think 100 is
Me too. That's,
Okay.
that's a pretty good attention getter.
Okay. So
You're
anything
talking,
for
you're
this,
talking about people's lives when you block a fire hydrant. Make it worthwhile, $500. Seriously, what if it's your house is on fire and the fire department can't get to that hydrant? $100 fine is nothing for that.
well, to me it would be.
never do it again.
What's the board saying?
$100 is fine.
You still want to stick with 100?
Mhm.
The rest of the members?
I wouldn't be opposed to 150, but 500 is just, it blows my mind. He's right, but I'm thinking,
Well, let's meet in the middle, let's go 250.
Make it equivalent to like handicap.
Does anybody disagree with the 250? For the fire hydrant? For the fire hydrant? Same as handicap. Putting lives in danger, the gentleman's correct.
It's doing good.
I'm raising money, what's sitting
I'll
here?
go with the 250.
Bob? Okay, so we'll put that one at 250.
And these fines would have to be in the ordinances.
Okay.
That's my recommendation, is, ma'am.
So we agreed that anything was $20, now is 25. The fire hydrant is 250. The handicap is 250. And we will change the ordinances to state this.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I have a motion to do these changes?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. You got $50. I got my 50 bucks. I did, really. I got more than my 50, you're right.
Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, under new business, 2018 ambient service contract rates, Westport Island and Edgecombe. Mary?
In your packet, you'll see there's a two-sided document. One side has the Westport Island rate and the other has Edgecombe. Edgecombe had reached out, they're in the process of their budget right now, as are we, and they wanted to know what next year's rate was going to be. So, we had this discussion before.
What did we charge Dresden? Because I'd like to keep it, just keep it the same.
I want to say 6, Jeff, but I'm
That's what
not,
I'm thinking.
I'm not 100%.
Yeah, 6.
I think it was a certain rate the first year, and then, it's gonna go up, but,
When do they need this?
well, they asked for it a week or so ago, and our meeting got canceled, and then I received an email today from Mike Smith wondering, who's on their board, wondering if we had set the rate, so I think soon, but
I'd like to keep
But
it with
remember,
Dresden.
we're also meeting again next Tuesday, so if you
just
want
wondering.
information, we have a week to get it.
would you like me to get the Dresden?
Well, I was just,
Thinking you'd like to have a little more information? Okay.
well, I thought if we could put this off until we, had a clear direction.
Okay.
And the reason why I said that, Bob, is we just signed a contract with them, and I don't want to have a contract with Westport and Edgecombe be less. It's just,
I'd
Let me
like-
get those numbers for you.
I'd like to make sure that,
it's the same.
Okay.
that Dresden is 6. And if it is 6,
Then that's what these are. Yep,
then I put these up to 6.
yes.
All right. I'll double check that for you and bring it back to you.
Perfect.
Okay.
Do we also have all that gets involved in this?
No, I'll look at the CLC.
CLC.
Okay. So we
Just
put
these
that
other
on
two
for-
partners. Yep.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
so that,
They paid 4.
they
They
paid
to
for.
go with CLC.
I believe so, yes. I
We
believe so.
offered it at 3 and they went with a 4.
Mhm. Okay, I'm bringing that back to you.
Thank you. Wiscasset Area Chamber of Commerce 7th Annual Dinner.
Well, I realize that this is a bit late notice, but because it was in your packet for the meeting that we had canceled, the dinner's tomorrow night, so I don't know if you can get a chair this late, but.
You still can.
But I just wanted you all to know that the chamber had invited all of you to attend, and if you would like to attend, I know Catherine is attending, so if you would like to, I can.
We've got one more day in January, don't rush it. So it's Thursday,
Oh,
not
sorry,
tomorrow.
Thursday.
I wish it was.
So, if there are others that would like to join, let me know, and I will follow up with this, otherwise I know Catherine will be there.
Excuse me, how much is the dinner?
$40, it says, tickets are $40, would you like? It's at the 1812 Farm on the Bristol Road in Bristol. The meeting's at 6:30, the dinner's at 7. The keynote speaker is Bill Codd from the U.S. Small Business Administration. It sounds like it'll be a good meeting. So let me know if you want to think about it a little bit.
Yes, Marion, if anybody does, if you can reach out to us first thing tomorrow morning, because we are given a final number tomorrow.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you.
Okay, next item is the monthly financials, department year-to-date expense report, and HM Payson. HM Payson, you're doing good.
So if you look at your department year-to-date expense report, you'll see that the budgets are pretty much online, except for those that, you anticipate that we will have spent the money on and is appropriate. And there are some that are a little bit below because they have a lot of spring expenditures. So all of the departments are doing well. We have not had to take a withdrawal on our TAN lately, so for that we are grateful. We had quite a few folks pay extra on their taxes before the end of the year, so that was a great help to our cash flow. And you have two documents in your packet on the HM Payson. When the investment committee met, we thought it would be a good idea to include the December 31st review that the investment committee reviewed. Jeff, if you have anything to offer.
I was gonna let everybody know that 14,324,000 is now pretty close to $15 million. So when we met last week, that number was 14.8. And Dan said that it'd probably be, when we met tonight, that it would be at 15 million. So that's really good numbers.
May I ask a couple questions, just for my own personal curiosity? When did this fund start? It's how many years old?
2009, I think.
And how much did you start with?
9 million.
And where did that money come from originally?
It was there.
There from where?
It was whittled down from around 16 million.
That the town had
Maybe.
from
Right.
Yankee. So
Right.
you started with 9, and now you've got 15, and you said it was like you're making $100,000 a month or more possibly now.
And the town should know too that we took 1.5 million out of this already to consolidate to get out of RSU 12. So this,
Right. Well, I didn't know that, but I mean, I don't remember if I did.
Yeah.
But the 15 million that you have now, I mean, that's in a way imaginary money, isn't it? Because it's stock market money.
No, it's
It can't go back down?
No.
Just can't go back?
it
I mean, if
absolutely
World
can
War
go
III
down.
pops out, boom, stock market crashes. I mean,
Correct.
Are we susceptible to a bubble? I mean,
Correct.
should
It's
we
not-
take some of this money now, out, and use it?
That's what I wanted to do.
Right, that's why I'm asking. I mean, it seems like a lot of money. We're
Yep.
worried about money, and we've got 15 million sitting there.
Yep.
And creating an inflow of $100,000 a month.
Right.
Well, we
So
do
I don't
take
know, I'm
that.
not an investor, I'm not, I don't know. I'm
Nope.
trying to learn what
Yep.
the situation is, but
Yep.
it seems like we could be pretty creative with this.
Correct.
We still have $10 million, right? If we use 5 million. I don't know, I'm just
No,
saying.
you're-
What's the end goal? I mean, how big can it get before we say, let's do something?
It's up to the board.
It's up to the Board of Selectmen,
Right.
but every year we do take, we have a policy in place to take a percentage of the interest that we earn over the year for capital improvement.
Right.
And it's one of the things that the board has discussed as far as taking out a bond for our capital improvement to update our entire infrastructure and use money from here. But again, this is something that we've talked about now for 2 years, and it hasn't happened. So hopefully next year, or this will happen.
Well, I just want to push this idea, since I'm up here, of using some of this money for the school that we couldn't use prior. I mean, this is a good source to fix our infrastructure there as well. We're talking about updating the lights in the town, you know, to the LED lights, to the 100 that the town owns. And then the stuff that the school has, I mean, that would, the school wouldn't have to take out a loan or whatever might happen, because you've got 15 million right here. So, just saying.
Thank you. Okay, shall we go on? We have a resignation from our police department. You want to read it?
Paul Baskins, who was the administrative assistant at the police department, submitted his resignation to Chief Lang on January 8th. He's not resigning as a reserve officer, just as the administrative assistant. He was able to secure a position with benefits and full-time, and so we were sorry to see him go, but we certainly understand that it was important for his family. So, but we still get to see him around, so that's a good thing. So, for those of you that had the pleasure of meeting him, he's a great guy. So, I'm sure the chief and his crew are feeling that vacancy
Very much so.
critically. So,
Okay, I make a motion to accept his resignation and regret.
second that.
All those in favor? Thank you. All right, town managers report.
You have in your packet a resolution. You know, over a few meetings ago, we've had communications with Zion, Illinois, and a community in Florida who both have stored nuclear waste, just like Wiscasset has. And I have been in communication with Senator Collins' office and Senator King's office, and they have asked for direction as to what the town would like them to do. And I would draw your attention to the item that's marked 11A. Specifically, if this HR 3970 is referred to as the Stranded Act for communities that have closed nuclear power plants, if in fact this bill was to pass as it's presented, it is expected, and again, this is in process, and you know how bills start out and they end up, could look totally different. But it would be anticipated that from 2018 to 2024, it is possible that the town of Wiscasset would receive $8,134 a year for that period of time. And so I have a resolution that was drafted. You have the actual bill in your packet that you can read at your convenience. I won't read it in its entirety.
Just for clarification, I don't think it's 8 million a year, it's 8 million over that.
No, I clarified it, Jeff.
No kidding.
I did, because I thought the same thing you did, that
Yep.
it was over that time period, and,
Wow.
yeah. But understand that
I
doesn't
know,
mean that
no.
will finish up that way,
No.
it's just as proposed.
Wow.
But the resolution, it starts out a resolution of the Board of Selectmen of Wiscasset, Maine, to request support for Senate Bill S 1903 and House Bill HR 3970. And it has a bunch of whereases that I won't read, that is required in the bill.
Come on.
The most important part is the now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Selectmen of Wiscasset, Maine. The board has determined that it's in the best interest of the town to support a program to make payments to units of general local government where the power plant is located, and that we support the legislation. The board finds that it is imperative that the legislation receive additional support from its United States Senators Susan Collins and Angus King as to the proposed Senate legislation, and by Representatives Shelley Pingree and Bruce Poliquin as to the proposed House legislation. And so basically what we are asking, if the board decides they want to, is for our local delegation to support this legislation as it moves forward. I will tell you that Marge Kilkelly has been in regular communication with me and is looking to know what she can do, as she always does, to help the town of Wiscasset, and as our two senators also are very much on board in whatever the direction that you folks would like to go in. So I am asking that the board formally request the support and that the resolution take place immediately upon its adoption, if the board so desires.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
I was just going to say, I wanted to thank our congressional delegation for all the work that they have done on this in the past couple of years. That's like the 23rd.
Yes, that's because that's when they had written it for, but they've done a lot of work, and there's been a lot of work behind the scenes, as you know, over the last month and a half, conversation going back and forth. And again, I want to make sure you know, we don't know what the bill will look like when it's finally approved, but it at least sends a direction, so.
I just wanted to ask a question, if you know who's sponsoring the bill.
Yes, Senator Duckworth, I believe?
Oh, from South Dakota.
Yes.
And do you know, did they give you any sense if there's much support for it?
I understand that there are 5 states that are in the same position that we are, and that there is support for it. And they were looking for, obviously, support from the Republican delegation from Maine. So where we'll go from here, we don't know, but we're hopeful.
March is really gung-ho behind the.
She's great,
Yep.
yeah.
Jim, do you have something?
Well, Marion answered one of my questions. I was curious how many states that were involved, and when does the bill go forward?
I'm not sure what the timeline is on it. I just know they needed this first. I know it's been introduced, but I don't know where it is currently in the process.
I can go wrong with it.
Sorry, what's it?
How do you fix it?
I don't know.
We got another one.
It's also draft, though. That's okay, then.
Ah.
Who are you?
You
Looks like 12 states.
white out at the bottom. Well,
Put the name in, yeah.
California's
and Jeff wants to sign on mine.
It's a good support number.
Yeah, just make sure you tell them.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a stipulation or an
Sign.
obligation
Your
on
name
how,
and mine.
how
You
we
got
are
it.
This is
able
the one.
to use that money, that if in fact we got money for this? What are we supposed to do with that money?
The way that the bill is written is that it's supposed to be for infrastructure and capital improvement.
Around the site?
No, in the town of
In the
Wisconsin.
town. What does it cost us to maintain those cans underground and stuff?
They're above,
Doesn't
they're
cost
above ground.
Well, what does it cost the
It
town?
doesn't cost the town of Wiscasset anything.
It doesn't
That's
cost us
federal.
anything?
Great question, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, right, I'm not done,
Not
sorry.
done.
That's it.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No. So, you can have in your packet, my written report. The most important thing, and most of you probably know this better than I, the community center will be celebrating 20 years. It opened February 14th, 1998, and so they are planning to have a big celebration, and so I just want to have folks mark their calendars and this is for community-wide. It's not just limited to members, because obviously our community provides great support for the facility. So just wanted to remind you about that. A brief legal update, only a couple of things. For those of you that have been asking, At the settlement conference that was held on January 24th, the court took no action, and the next judicial settlement conference is scheduled for February 7th. So the reason that we haven't had any discussion is there's nothing to discuss. So the court rescheduled. So I know a lot of folks were interested. We did post it on our Facebook page and on our website, and we will continue to keep updates on there as if something does change. But I don't know anything else at this time. The Deering family, Wawanock LLC, Bermuda Isle, etc., has filed an appeal from the Business and Consumer Court decision to the State of Maine Supreme Judicial Court. The town of Wiscasset is again named a party of interest, and any response from the town, if there is one, is due March 14th. So that part of the litigation continues to move forward. I do have a copy of the complete filing. If anybody really would like to read it, I'd be happy to provide it.
Please send it to me.
So I just wanted to bring the board up to speed on that. You do have some copies of correspondence in your packet. Excuse me. You have a letter from the National Trust for Historic Preservation, a letter from an email from Mark Robinson, who is the Deering family's contact, and then a letter from Mr. Deering himself. Excuse me. So if you want to look at those, if you have any questions. And the reason that, excuse me, they're in your packet is all of them had asked for it to become part of the record, so you have that. Chief Lang shared with me about the sunken boat in Wiscasset, and has shared that the state and local authorities are still monitoring it. The boat is still there. And if anyone has any concerns, to please contact the harbor master, and I've included the phone number. There's nothing new.
Nothing, no new developments.
And I just want you to know that the chief and our harbor master have stayed on top of this, and I appreciate that very much, because we get a lot of calls at the town office, and it's helpful to have the information, so thank you. There's a memo in your packet from Lucia Droby regarding the summer program for the art walk. They'd like to bring food trucks again. I don't know, we didn't have any issue with them last year, but I had said that I would bring it forward to the board. I don't think we want them to have to come every time, if the board is generally okay with it.
My thought was that the food trucks were here because Red's and Frank's Reds were closed.
I don't
No.
think so.
No?
I know that they were very thoughtful and didn't have anything in the food trucks that was served at any of our local restaurants.
Okay.
So there was, they're very thoughtful about that.
Okay.
So,
No, I was thinking of maybe the winter one, when they
Yes.
closed the street. That was my, sorry.
well, that's okay.
Senior moment.
So if the board is generally okay with them, I'd like to communicate to Lucia that
Sure.
they're okay for the 2018 season. And I know they work with the chief on closing the roads and when things need to happen, so.
And that's what Jeff just brought up, that same thing would still occur at Middle Street at Sarah's, between the Chinese restaurant and, it's not Sarah's, but the Treats. Just that first block, basically, up to the parking lot behind Treats would be closed. And they would give us notice, so all the emergency chiefs would be.
Road closure.
Correct.
Yeah, good, right, excellent.
Okay, thank you, John. The Help Yourself Food Pantry has requested that the board consider donating the $1,000 that we had allocated in the budget last year under the general assistance budget. You might remember that we had approved and had, with the taxpayers' support, of the transportation of the food to our pantries, and that's no longer required. They do that, and so They had shared with me that there's a great need at the pantry at the high school, and they would like to have us send $1,000 to the Good Shepherd Food Pantry, dedicated to the high school food pantry. As you know, they do an amazing job. It is. So with the board's permission, I would like to do that.
Absolutely.
Do you need a motion?
No, I mean, it's in the budget. I
Yep.
just wanted to.
It's just moving it from the delivery to,
Right. And I really, the town really appreciates what the Help Yourself Food Pantry and the pantry at the church, the Nazarene Church. It helps keep our general assistance budget down, and they do great work, and we work well with them, so. That's all I have.
Thank you. Okay, other board business, do the selectmen have anything to say? Yes, Bob?
I missed this, if I could bring up something that we spoke about earlier when Jason got up and spoke about the clock. Did we pay for these materials?
I haven't seen a bill.
No, you haven't, I just
You just
got
came
them.
today, right?
Yeah, I went and picked them out, I wanted to be sure I got good boards, so, it's about $400.
We have money to.
Right, okay, yeah.
Just make sure you give me the.
you'll
Yeah,
get
I will.
reimbursed us, for sure.
Yeah, oh, I'm not worried about that, yeah, it's a matter of, I might be able to return some stuff, I just got extra stuff for extra bracing, and I don't know what I'll have left when I'm done exactly, so.
Well, when the job is complete, please send it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not
To bring
concerned
it
with
into
it.
Mary.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Yeah, no problem, no problem.
Thank you. Anybody else on the board have anything? Yes.
I neglected to mention one thing. I have a PSA. We're currently have a scam, a national scam that's going around town right now. And for those viewers at home that can listen in, the police departments here in Maine do not solicit funds. There's about 6 or half dozen people that have called the police department already advising us, and we put this out on Facebook. So if someone calls home and says at the police department, your local police department, we're not calling you. Don't give them money.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. I got one yesterday from the state, he said
I
he
got,
was from
I
the
got
state
one for the
police.
fire department, so, yeah.
And I hang on. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, assessor business. We have a couple here to take care of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeff.
Excuse me, we are still in a meeting. Thank you. So what do you want to do with the abatements, sir?
I'd like to take all three at the same time.
Fine with me.
Is that a second? Fine with me?
Yeah, fine with me, the second.
Ben has a question.
Yes, Ben.
The one that I Matthew, the cover page says $116 on the abatement. When you get down to the actual abatement, it says $287. I thought that was just for a mobile home being moved. He doesn't know what happened, does he?
No. There were two of them then. One is for the 11690, and that one, is for 2016, and then the one for the 287, is for the new account and homestead exemption that he didn't receive. He got charged for both of them, I guess, twice.
This has been reworked since we had it last week.
Yes, it has, yes.
Oh.
You are correct.
Nothing's changed, except
It just was a little bit, it wasn't as clear, I didn't.
No, it was.
So I had it, and maybe it's still on helpful, but.
Well, this cover page, this is
For what year?
This one's, the cover page is for 216, and it was assessed in error, and the agent recommended the abatement. And then the other one that you have for the 287 was, it also includes all the interest and costs because they were reinstalled. So that's the write-off, the total.
Okay.
Okay, understand?
It's just one point. It's not really money going back to me. It's just to clean up the.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Ben?
No.
Okay. All those in favor? Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. All those in favor? Okay. Sure, now you talk.
I